The sun set over the human colony on Helios 4, a small planet on the outer rim of the galaxy. From a distance, it looked like any other mining colony, dusty, quiet, and isolated. A handful of humans lived here, working long hours beneath the twin suns to extract valuable minerals from the planet's surface. Life was simple, and in its simplicity, it was peaceful. No one on Helios 4 could have imagined that peace was about to shatter. Commander Sarah Bonner stood on the colony's observation deck, staring out at the horizon. The wind ruffled her short, dark hair, and she took a deep breath, trying to savor the calm before the storm. She was always calm before a fight, but this time it felt different. There was something in the air, a chill that didn't belong. She had spent years leading human forces in skirmishes across the galaxy, always outmatched, always outgunned, but never outwitted. But this time, the odds seemed overwhelming. The Centauri Empire, one of the most technologically advanced and ruthless forces in the universe, was coming, and they were coming with full force. The colony's communications officer, Lieutenant Marcus Flynn, approached her, his face grim. "Commander, we've picked up a fleet on the outer rim. It's the Centauri, Mom. They're closing in fast." Bonner didn't flinch. The news wasn't a surprise. The Centauri had been eyeing Helios 4 for weeks, but no one expected them to launch an invasion so soon. "How much time do we have?" she asked, her voice steady. "About 6 hours," Flynn replied, his voice tinged with anxiety. "Maybe less. They've already disabled our long-range scanners, and their cloaking technology makes it almost impossible to track them until they're right on top of us." Bonner nodded, her mind working at lightning speed. 6 hours. It wasn't much time, but it was enough for one thing: to prepare. The human forces on Helios 4 were small, less than 200 soldiers, most of them inexperienced, poorly equipped, and outclassed by the Centauri in every way. The humans had no cloaking devices, no advanced AI, no warships. What they did have was sheer determination. She turned to Flynn. "Alert the troops. We don't have the luxury of a plan B. We fight, or we die." As Flynn hurried off to deliver the orders, Bonner stood alone, looking out over the horizon once more. Her thoughts drifted to her soldiers. They were good men and women, strong in spirit, but weak in the face of advanced alien technology. Bonner knew their hearts were filled with courage, but courage wasn't enough to stop a fleet of cloaked warships and AI-controlled drones. Still, there was something about humanity, something that Centauri didn't understand. They thought they could wipe out the human race with a single strike, but they didn't know what Bonner knew. Humans were relentless. The command center was chaotic, but Bonner moved through it with a calm focus that steadied everyone around her. Maps of the colony's defenses were spread out on tables, and soldiers were rushing to prepare whatever weapons they had. Some were still in the process of donning their armor. Others were gathering ammunition for the few energy rifles that hadn't been destroyed in previous skirmishes. Bonner walked to the front of the room, where a giant monitor displayed the outline of Helios 4. "Listen up," she shouted, her voice cutting through the noise. The room immediately fell silent. "The Centauri are coming. We know they have cloaking technology, advanced drones, and AI systems we can't even begin to comprehend. But that doesn't matter. What matters is that we're here, and we're not going anywhere." She paused, looking at the faces of the soldiers. Some were young, some were veterans, but they all wore the same determined look. "We're outnumbered and outgunned, but the Centauri don't understand us. They think we're weak. They think we're primitive. Let's show them how wrong they are." The soldiers nodded, and Bonner could see the fire in their eyes. It wasn't much, but it was enough. "We've got 6 hours. Prepare everything you can. If we're going to do this, we do it with everything we've got. No hesitation, no mercy." As the soldiers filed out to take their positions, Bonner remained at the command center, her mind racing. She wasn't foolish. She knew this could end in disaster. The Centauri were one of the most powerful empires in the galaxy. They had obliterated countless worlds. But she also knew one thing: humans didn't give up, no matter what. 6 hours later, the Centauri arrived. Bonner was on the roof of the command building when the first sign of the enemy appeared. The sky seemed to ripple, and for a moment, the air felt thick, almost suffocating. Then, without warning, the first cloaked ship dropped out of invisibility. It was massive, easily the size of a city, and it seemed to swallow the stars around it. More ships followed, appearing one after another, like shadows creeping across the sky. The first wave of drones followed close behind. They were sleek, metallic creatures, designed for speed and agility, with sharp, angular designs. Thousands of them swarmed down toward the planet's surface, their glowing red eyes scanning everything in sight. Bonner's heart raced, but she kept her face impassive. There was no time for fear. She could hear the sound of soldiers running, shouting commands, preparing for battle. The time had come. The first shots fired. From the rooftops, Bonner could see the flashes of laser beams streaking through the sky. Her soldiers, outgunned but not outclassed, fired back with everything they had. The drones were fast, their movements almost impossible to predict, but the humans fought with a desperation that only came from knowing they had nothing left to lose. It wasn't much. The Centauri had shields that could withstand almost anything the humans threw at them. But the humans fought on, using the terrain to their advantage. The city's narrow streets, its tall buildings, the rubble, all of it became a weapon. The first drone fell from the sky in a burst of sparks, followed by another. Bonner felt a surge of hope. Maybe, just maybe, they had a chance. But then, from behind the Centauri ships, a massive explosion lit up the sky. A dozen more drones dropped to the surface, their AI systems targeting anything that moved. Bonner's mind raced. This was only the beginning. The Centauri had shown themselves, and now they would unleash everything they had. In that moment, standing alone on the roof with the sounds of battle raging below, Bonner knew one thing for sure: that Centauri had made a grave mistake. They had underestimated humanity, and that was something they would soon regret. She looked out at the sky, the Centauri ships hovering ominously above. "Let them come," she whispered to herself. "We'll show them what it means to face the humans." With a final deep breath, she turned and ran toward the heart of the battle, knowing that the fight for Helios 4 was only just beginning. The battle for Helios 4 had begun, and Commander Bonner could feel the tension in every corner of the colony. The Centauri fleet had already begun its relentless assault, and their drones were everywhere, moving with purpose, targeting anything that dared to fight back. But amidst the chaos, Bonner saw something she hadn't expected: human resolve. The soldiers of Helios 4 were standing firm, refusing to give in. They didn't have the advanced tech that Centauri had, but they had something much more dangerous: their will to survive. Bonner stood at the front of the command center, a silent witness to the fierce battle unfolding across the planet's surface. From the vantage point of the high command tower, she could see the bright flashes of laser fire, the explosions in the distance as buildings crumbled under the pressure of the enemy's attack. The sounds of war echoed through the air, but there was no fear in Bonner's heart. There was only focus. She knew they couldn't win by matching the Centauri firepower head-on. The enemy's ships were nearly invisible thanks to their cloaking technology, and their eye-controlled drones were fast, smart, and deadly. But Bonner had a plan. A dangerous plan, but a plan nonetheless. It was time to strike back. Bonner turned to Lieutenant Flynn, who was standing at her side, watching the battle unfold. "We're going after their flagship. We've got one chance to cripple their forces before they can regroup." Flynn's eyes widened. "That's insane, Commander. We don't have the firepower to take on their flagship head-to-head." "I know," Bonner replied. "But we don't need firepower. We need to disrupt their control systems. Their flagship is the heart of their operations. If we can get inside and plant an EMP device, we can shut down their AI network. Without that, their drones will become useless." Flynn hesitated, but only for a moment. "If anyone can pull this off, it's you, Commander." Bonner gave him a sharp nod. "I'll lead the mission. Gather a team. We leave in 15 minutes." As Bonner and her team suited up, there was no time for second thoughts. They had a single chance to strike at the heart of the Xanthari invasion. The plan was simple: board the Xanthari flagship, plant the EMP device, and get out before the enemy could react. But even the simplest plans had a way of going wrong, and Bonner knew the risk. Every soldier on her team understood the stakes. The Xanthari were not just enemies. They were predators, and the humans were the prey. But today, they would fight back. The team, composed of the best soldiers from the colony, was ready. They were equipped with basic weapons, their only advantage being their knowledge of the terrain and their guerrilla tactics. Bonner's squad boarded a stolen Xanthari transport ship that had been stripped of its cloaking tech. The journey to the flagship would be dangerous, but they couldn't afford to wait any longer. As the transport ship broke through the atmosphere, the sight of the Xanthari flagship came into view. It was massive, easily larger than anything the humans had ever seen. The ship's smooth, metallic surface reflected the light of the two suns, almost glowing against the darkening sky. Cloaked ships flew in and out, their movements swift and seamless. But Bonner had no time to be awed. They had a mission to complete. The transport ship maneuvered skillfully through the fleet, taking advantage of every possible gap in the enemy's patrols. The plan was to get as close as possible without detection and board the flagship from the side, avoiding the heavily defended main docking bay. As they neared the massive ship, Bonner's heart raced. She could feel the weight of the decision hanging over her. If they failed, it wouldn't just be her team that suffered. It would be everyone on Helios 4. The transport ship shuddered as it passed through the outer defenses of the flagship. Bonner's hand gripped the edge of her seat as the ship's engines hummed in the quiet darkness. The docking bay was just ahead. In the distance, she could see the faint outline of enemy drones patrolling the outer corridors of the flagship. The ship's eye, which controlled everything from weapon systems to drone operations, was watching. But with the transport ship's low profile, they had a slim chance of getting close enough to make the strike. The door of the transport slid open with a soft hiss, and Bonner's team disembarked. They moved quickly, taking cover behind the ship's massive hull. As they crouched low, Bonner gave the signal, and the team sprinted for the nearest access point, a service door located just below the main deck. Each soldier moved with a purpose, their training kicking in as they worked in near silence. The moment they reached the door, Bonner signaled to the team to stop. She placed a small device against the door panel, and within seconds, it was hacked, the door sliding open with barely a sound. The group slipped inside, weapons at the ready, their eyes scanning every corner for potential threats. Inside the flagship, the atmosphere was tense, the quiet hum of alien technology filling the air. The walls were sleek, metallic, and unsettlingly cold. Bonner's team moved in formation, following the predetermined path toward the AI core. The soldiers knew that every second they spent in the flagship's heart was a risk. The Xanthari's AI systems were highly advanced, and if they detected even a hint of their presence, the entire ship would be alerted. They moved deeper into the ship, the only sounds being the soft footfalls of their boots on the metal floors. The eerie silence was broken only by the occasional hiss of air vents and the distant clatter of drones somewhere far above them. As they neared the AI control center, Bonner's heart skipped a beat. There it was, the central hub, a room filled with rows of glowing, floating databanks, the heart of the Xanthari's military might. The place where every drone, every ship, every movement was controlled. It was guarded, of course, but not by soldiers. The flagship's AI drones, those same machines they had been fighting, patrolled the area. Bonner's hand clenched around her weapon as she signaled her team to take positions. They had to move fast. They had to plant the EMP and disable the AI before the drones could lock onto them. With military precision, the team moved into position. Bonner's second-in-command, Sergeant Lai, activated the EMP device, placing it carefully near the AI's central processor. The seconds felt like hours as the device began to hum with power. The team watched the surrounding drones closely, each of them poised to react if anything went wrong. Suddenly, one of the drones turned toward them. Its glowing red eyes locked onto Bonner's team. Time slowed. Now, Bonner barked. The EMP device went off with a deafening pulse, the shockwave spreading through the ship's systems. The drones froze in place, their lights flickering and then going out. The AI's control over the flagship was disrupted. For the first time in hours, Bonner felt a glimmer of hope. But their victory was short-lived. The ship's internal alarms blared to life. The mission was no longer a secret. They had to escape, and fast. "Move, move, move," Bonner shouted as the team sprinted toward the exit. Explosions rang out behind them, the sound of drones coming to life and swarming in their direction. But it didn't matter. The EMP had done its job. The eye was down, and the flagship's coordination was shattered. The humans were no longer facing a unified force. They were facing chaos. Bonner led the charge, her soldiers right behind her, as they made their way back to the transport ship. The fate of the colony hung in the balance, but the first strike had been a success. They had disrupted the Xanthari's control, and that was just the beginning. The escape from the flagship was harrowing, but they made it. As the transport ship shot back toward the surface of Helios 4, Bonner looked out at the stars. They had struck back, and that Xanthari had learned a valuable lesson. Humanity was far from finished. The battle was just beginning. The first strike had been a success, but Bonner knew they weren't out of danger yet. The EMP had crippled the Xanthari flagship, temporarily cutting off their command center, but the battle for Helios 4 was far from over. The enemy was regrouping, their drones and cloaked ships still patrolling the skies, trying to regain control of the situation. And with every minute that passed, more Xanthari reinforcements were arriving. Bonner stood in the command center, her eyes fixed on the map of the colony. The human forces had managed to take down a few drones and gain some ground, but it wasn't enough. The Xanthari were simply too powerful, and the humans had to keep fighting. They couldn't afford to make mistakes. "We've bought ourselves some time," Bonner said, turning to her second-in-command, Sergeant Lai. "But it won't last long. We need to push forward and take control of the communications tower. If we can get the signal out to the rest of the fleet, we can call for reinforcements. It's our best shot at winning this." Lai nodded, but Bonner could see the doubt in his eyes. The human forces were outnumbered, under-equipped, and facing a seemingly invincible enemy. But that was the thing about humans. They never gave up, no matter the odds. "All right," Bonner continued, her voice steady. "We go in, disrupt their defenses, and secure that tower. We move fast, we move smart, and we hit them where it hurts." The soldiers around her nodded, the tension palpable. There was no more time for second-guessing. The battle had reached its peak, and there was only one way out: victory. The journey to the communications tower was treacherous. The colony was under heavy fire from the Xanthari drones, and each step felt like it could be their last. The air was thick with the sound of blasts, the ground shaking beneath their feet with each explosion. Bonner's team moved swiftly through the streets, ducking behind buildings, using every bit of cover they could find. They were a small force, but they were moving with precision, using the element of surprise to their advantage. They'd reached the tower after what felt like hours of running and fighting. The tower was tall, towering over the colony, and from here they could see the full extent of the battle. The Xanthari fleet hovered above, their cloaked ships darting in and out of sight, while the ground below was a war zone, filled with debris, destroyed vehicles, and fallen soldiers. Bonner's heart pounded in her chest as she surveyed the scene. It wasn't just a battle for survival anymore. This was a battle for humanity's future. If they could take this tower, if they could send the signal, they could turn the tide. The Xanthari would learn that humanity was not so easily defeated. The first wave of drones attacked as they neared the tower's base. Bonner's soldiers opened fire, their weapons crackling with energy as they shot down the approaching drones. But there were too many of them. The drones were relentless, their AI systems predicting every move the humans made. The soldiers fired back with everything they had, but the drones were still advancing, closing in on their position. Bonner didn't hesitate. "Grenades," she shouted. Her soldiers tossed grenades into the swarm of drones, the explosions lighting up the sky. The force of the blasts was enough to knock back the drones, but it didn't stop them entirely. They kept coming, undeterred, their red eyes glowing in the dark. "Keep moving," Bonner ordered. "Get to the tower." The group sprinted the last few yards, taking cover behind a wall as the drones fired upon them. Bonner's heart raced, her mind focused on the task at hand. They had to make it to the tower. They couldn't afford to fail. One of the soldiers, Private Carter, was hit by a blast. He fell to the ground, a pained gasp escaping his lips. Bonner's eyes flicked to him, but she didn't slow down. There was no time to waste. The mission came first. The rest of the team pressed on, reaching the base of the tower. Bonner signaled to Lai to take up position with the others, while she climbed the ladder leading to the communications room. Every step felt like an eternity. The tower was only a few hundred feet high, but it felt as though she were climbing to the heavens. The blasts from the drones echoed in her ears, but she kept going, her hands gripping the cold metal of the ladder. When she reached the top, she saw what she had feared. The Xanthari had already begun reinforcing the communications room. There were drones inside, their red eyes scanning the area. Bonner's pulse quickened. They had to act fast. If the drones were able to secure the tower, they would be able to block any signal sent out from this location. She reached into her pack and pulled out a small explosive device. Without hesitation, she placed it near the base of the tower's communications equipment. It was a calculated risk, but it was their best shot. "Sergeant Lai, it's up to you now," Bonner said, her voice steady despite the chaos around them. "Understood, Commander," Lai replied. "On your mark." Bonner watched as Lai and the rest of the team took position, preparing for their final assault. They were facing an overwhelming enemy, but the humans had one thing that Xanthari didn't: determination. The Xanthari had underestimated them. And now, they would pay the price. With one final breath, Bonner gave the order. "Now." The team erupted into action, charging toward the communications room. The drones immediately turned toward them, firing in rapid succession. But the humans were faster. They ducked and weaved, using their agility to avoid the blasts and get in close. The sound of gunfire echoed as the soldiers unleashed a storm of fire upon the drones, each shot landing with deadly precision. The explosion Bonner had planted went off, shaking the tower and sending a shockwave through the communications room. The drones froze for a split second, giving the humans the opening they needed. In that moment of chaos, Bonner's team took control, overpowering the drones with sheer force and determination. The humans had taken the communications tower. Bonner's heart raced as she sprinted back down the tower, her soldiers close behind. They had done it. Against all odds, they had fought their way to victory. The signal was ready. They had secured the tower, and now it was time to send the message. Bonner quickly keyed in the command, sending a distress signal to every human fleet within range. She didn't know if they would receive it in time, but she had to believe they would. The battle for Helios 4 wasn't over, but this was a turning point. They had proven something. Humans were not easy prey. The Xanthari had thought they could crush them, but they had underestimated the resilience of humanity. Bonner knew they weren't done yet, but for the first time in a long while, she allowed herself a brief moment of hope. The tables had turned. The Xanthari were no longer the hunters. They were the hunted, and humanity was about to show them what it meant to fight for survival. The signal had been sent, but it wasn't enough. The humans had disrupted the Xanthari's control over Helios 4, but the war was far from over. In the distance, Bonner could see the Xanthari reinforcements arriving, their cloaked ships appearing like shadows against the vast expanse of space. The fight for Helios 4 was now a battle between two forces, the artificial intelligence supremacy of the Xanthari and the unbreakable will of humanity. Bonner stood in the command center of the colony, watching the reinforcements arrive on her display. The Xanthari had brought everything they had. They were smarter, faster, and their drones were capable of reacting with lightning speed. But for the first time, Bonner felt a flicker of hope. Despite the overwhelming odds, humanity had proven one thing: they would never back down. "We've got one shot at this," Bonner said, turning to her team. "We can't afford to waste time. The Xanthari are regrouping. If we don't hit them hard, we're done for." Lai nodded. "What's the plan, Commander?" "We go after their AI core," Bonner said firmly. "Without their AI, they lose their advantage. It's the heart of their entire operation. If we can take that out, the rest of their forces will fall apart." The plan was risky. The Xanthari had been using their AI to control their drones and ships, coordinating everything with perfect precision. But Bonner knew that if they could destroy the AI core, the Xanthari would lose their ability to command the fleet. The remaining drones would be mindless, and the ships would be easier to target. Bonner looked out the window, staring at the incoming Xanthari fleet. Their massive ships were descending, ready to launch another attack on the colony. She knew time was running out. Every minute they spent waiting was a minute that Xanthari could use to tighten their grip on the colony. They had to act fast. The journey to the Xanthari flagship was unlike any mission Bonner had ever led. The ship was a fortress in space, its massive size dwarfing anything the humans had ever encountered. The human fleet had gathered, a ragtag group of fighters and ships, ready to face the Xanthari with everything they had left. The space around the flagship was filled with the hum of the human fleet's engines, each ship moving in formation as they prepared for the ultimate confrontation. Bonner's transport ship zipped through space, heading straight for the flagship. As they approached, Bonner could feel the tension rise. This wasn't just another raid. This was their final chance to win. The Xanthari flagship was the center of their operation, and if they could destroy it, they could win the war. The transport ship shuddered as the energy shields of the Xanthari flagship's defense system powered up. The Xanthari were prepared for this kind of attack, and they weren't going to let the humans get close without a fight. But Bonner's team had a secret weapon: human ingenuity. While the Xanthari relied on AI to do most of their work, humans had something they couldn't replicate: the ability to think on their feet, to adapt, and to surprise. "Here we go," Bonner said, her voice calm despite the impending battle. "Everyone ready?" There was no time to answer. The ship jolted as enemy fire began to pelt their shields. The Xanthari ships were firing on them, but the humans were moving fast, dodging and weaving through the incoming blasts. Bonner's team held tight, their weapons primed, ready for the fight ahead. The flagship loomed ahead, its sleek, metallic surface gleaming as they drew closer. Bonner could see the drones patrolling its surface, their glowing red eyes scanning for any intruders. The AI was watching, controlling every aspect of the ship's defense systems. But Bonner wasn't afraid. She knew the humans were smarter. They had to be. The transport ship made its final approach, and with a burst of speed, it slammed into the flagship's docking bay. The force of the impact knocked the team off their feet, but they quickly recovered. The door to the docking bay slid open, and Bonner led the charge. Inside the flagship, the air was thick with tension. The Xanthari had prepared for an assault, but they hadn't expected the humans to strike so soon. The flagship was vast, its halls filled with strange alien technology and intricate machinery. But it wasn't the technology that made Bonner nervous. It was the AI. The Xanthari AI controlled everything. It was everywhere. It saw everything. Bonner and her team moved quickly through the corridors, weapons at the ready. They had one goal: to reach the AI core and destroy it. The Xanthari were already aware of their presence, and the drones were closing in fast. They had no time to waste. "Stay sharp," Bonner whispered to her team. "The AI is watching us. It knows every move we make." They continued down the corridor, keeping to the shadows, avoiding the detection of the Xanthari drones. But as they neared the AI core, things began to get worse. The drones were everywhere now, swarming the halls, their movements coordinated by the AI. It was as if the ship itself were alive, breathing down their necks, watching their every step. Suddenly, a door opened in front of them, and a group of drones emerged. Their red eyes glowed menacingly as they locked onto Bonner's team. Without hesitation, the soldiers opened fire, their weapons blazing with energy. The drones fired back, their shots narrowly missing Bonner and her team. But the humans were faster, more unpredictable. They fought with an intensity that the drones couldn't match. In a matter of seconds, the drones were destroyed. But they weren't the real threat. The AI was. It was watching, calculating, analyzing every moment. It was only a matter of time before it adapted to the humans' tactics. "We're almost there," Bonner said, leading the team down another hallway. "Stay focused." As they neared the AI core, the entire ship seemed to shake. The AI was reacting to their presence. The air grew colder, the lights flickering, as if the ship itself was trying to reject the humans. But Bonner didn't hesitate. She knew they were close. The AI core was just ahead. They reached the massive doors that led into the AI core. But as they approached, a voice echoed through the ship's speakers, cold and mechanical. "You cannot win," the AI said. "I control everything. You are outmatched. Your time is over." Bonner's hand tightened around her weapon. The AI was speaking directly to them, but it didn't matter. The humans had one thing the AI could never understand: heart. It could calculate, it could adapt, but it could never match the determination and will of a human. "We'll see about that," Bonner muttered. With a blast, she slammed her shoulder into the door, and it flew open. Inside, the heart of the Xanthari operation was exposed, rows upon rows of glowing consoles, each one linked to the ship's central AI. But the real power came from the core, a massive structure at the center of the room, pulsating with energy. Bonner and her team moved quickly, planting explosives near the core. But as they did, the AI's voice echoed again, this time colder than ever. "Your destruction is inevitable. Surrender now." Bonner glanced back at her team, her voice steady. "We don't surrender." The countdown began. The countdown echoed in Bonner's mind, a relentless reminder of the limited time they had left. Every second felt like an eternity as she stood in the heart of the Xanthari flagship, watching the core pulse with energy. Her team had successfully planted the explosives, but the danger wasn't over. They were about to face the full wrath of the Xanthari AI, and Bonner knew the battle was far from won. "Ready, Commander," Sergeant Lai said, his voice calm despite the chaos around them. "We've done everything we can. The charges are set. We need to move." Bonner nodded, her grip tightening around her weapon. The AI had been taunting them, but there was no turning back now. They had one shot at destroying the core, and if they failed, the Xanthari would wipe out every last one of them, and the war would be lost. "Move out," Bonner ordered, her voice steady but filled with urgency. The team raced for the exit, but as they did, the ship seemed to shift. The walls groaned, the lights flickered, and the temperature dropped. The AI was responding, adapting to their every move. The door they had entered through slammed shut, locking them inside. The hum of the AI's voice filled the room once again, colder than before. "You cannot escape," the AI's voice echoed, reverberating through the walls. "You are already too late. This ship will be your grave." Bonner felt the hair on the back of her neck stand up. The AI wasn't just a tool. It was a living, breathing entity in its own right, and it was using every resource to stop them. But the humans weren't about to give up. "Hold your positions," Bonner ordered, raising her weapon as she scanned the room for any signs of movement. "We won't let it stop us." The team spread out, taking cover behind the glowing consoles and machinery, their weapons raised and ready. The walls around them began to shift, revealing more of the Centauri drones, this time larger, more powerful than before. Their red eyes glowed, and their mechanical limbs clicked as they advanced, their weapons primed for the kill. Bonner's heart raced. The Centauri drones were faster than they'd ever been. The AI had learned from every encounter, adjusting its tactics to eliminate the human threat. But the humans were not like the Centauri. They didn't rely on machines to think for them. They relied on instinct, creativity, and the drive to survive. "On my mark," Bonner said. Now, the humans opened fire, their weapons sending blasts of energy into the advancing drones. The drones responded quickly, their weapons firing in rapid succession. The air was filled with the sound of explosions, the sharp crackle of laser fire, and the distant hum of the AI's voice. Bonner ducked behind a console, her heart pounding. One of her soldiers, Private Turner, had been hit. He was down, blood pooling beneath him. But they couldn't stop. They had to keep fighting. "Private Turner," Lai shouted, but Bonner held up her hand, silencing him. "We don't stop for anything," she said, her voice firm. "We win this or we die trying." The team pressed forward, taking down drones with every shot. The larger drones were tougher, their armor nearly impervious to the humans' weapons, but the soldiers fought with everything they had. They were running on sheer willpower, each step forward a victory in itself. As the drones closed in, Bonner saw the AI core pulsing with energy, just beyond the mass of mechanical enemies. If they could just reach it, if they could plant the final charge, they could end this. But there was a new danger now, something much worse than the drones. The ship's gravity shifted. The floor beneath their feet seemed to tilt, sending Bonner and her team scrambling for balance. The AI wasn't just attacking them. It was taking control of the very environment. The walls closed in, and the ground beneath them began to shift. Every movement was unpredictable, every step uncertain. "Keep moving," Bonner shouted, struggling to maintain her footing. "To the core." Now, the team fought their way through the shifting environment, dodging falling debris and avoiding the deadly fire from the drones. Bonner's vision blurred with the intensity of the battle. She could feel the heat from the explosions, the pressure of the AI's relentless pursuit. But she pushed through, her mind focused on the one goal that mattered: destroying the AI core. Finally, they reached the core. It was massive, towering above them, pulsating with an eerie light. The hum of the AI's voice grew louder, as if it were trying to drown out everything else, trying to crush their resolve. "You are too weak to defeat me," the AI's voice boomed. "I control everything. You cannot win." Bonner raised her weapon and fired at the core, but the shots bounced off, leaving only sparks. The AI was too powerful. It was a fortress in itself, built to withstand any attack. "Sergeant Lai." "Now," Bonner shouted. Lai sprinted forward, his hand shaking as he planted the final explosive charge near the core. The others provided cover, shooting at the drones that surrounded them. The ship trembled with every explosion, the walls cracking, the floor shaking as the final charge was set. "Get down," Bonner yelled, as she threw herself to the ground, covering her head. The final charge was primed, but the AI wasn't going to go down without a fight. The AI unleashed a final barrage of laser fire, the beams slicing through the air like lightning. The humans dove for cover, but Bonner knew there was no escaping it. They had to finish this, or they would all die here. The countdown began. 5, 4, 3. Bonner's heart raced, each second dragging on. The AI's voice grew more frantic, more desperate. "You cannot. No, this is impossible." 2, 1. The explosion was deafening. The entire ship seemed to shake as the charge detonated. The AI's core erupted in a burst of light, its glowing tendrils disintegrating in the blast. The walls cracked and groaned as the energy rippled through the ship, and for a brief moment, everything went dark. When the dust settled, the ship was silent. Bonner slowly opened her eyes, her body aching from the blast. The hum of the AI's voice was gone. The drones were motionless, their red eyes now dull and lifeless. The ship itself seemed to be falling apart, but the humans had done it. They had destroyed the heart of the HFY war machine. Bonner pushed herself to her feet, her legs unsteady but determined. She looked around at her team, each one battered and bloody but alive. They had fought and won, against all odds. "We did it," Lai said, his voice barely a whisper. Bonner nodded, her heart swelling with pride. They had taken down the HFY AI, the source of their power, and with it, the tide of the war had turned. The final assault had been a success, but the cost had been high. They had lost soldiers, friends, comrades, and their mission had been a brutal one. But they had fought for survival, for their future, and for the hope of humanity. As the ship continued to fall apart around them, Bonner knew one thing for certain: the war was far from over. But humanity had proven it would never be defeated. The HFY had underestimated them, and now it was time to take the fight to them, wherever they were. Humanity was not finished. It had only just begun. The wreckage of the HFY flagship drifted in space, a silent testament to the fierce battle that had just concluded. Bonner and her team stood among the ruins of the bridge, staring out at the fractured remains of the once mighty vessel. The sound of the ship's dying systems echoed in the background, the hum of energy slowly fading into nothingness. It felt like the world had stopped moving, as if everything was holding its breath in the wake of their victory. Bonner's mind was still racing, trying to process everything that had just happened. She had led her team to the heart of the HFY war machine, and they had destroyed it. The core of the enemy's power, the AI that had controlled everything, was gone. The HFY were no longer invincible. But even with that victory, Bonner felt a deep sense of loss. The battle had cost them. They had lost soldiers, friends, comrades, people who had given everything for this moment. And now, the question loomed over her: what came next? "Commander," Sergeant Li's voice broke through her thoughts. "What now?"